for 20 years almost. So I've never swiped right in my life. And I'm so glad that I just missed that way of getting into the dating pool. But I think I you know I think I would be really obsessed or like with profile pictures in general. Like I'd be looking at red flags and like, well, why did they choose this photo and what's in the background? And like I think it's a really interesting way of trying to pick out somebody's personality. I wouldn't know what picture to post myself either. Like um but yeah, it's definitely a phenomenon. Just the idea of meeting a stranger for the first time without having um any context. Like it's so much easier when a friend of a friend, and you have the social proof that surrounds people's friend groups, or
Yeah, I
meeting
suppose.
somebody
Yeah, I
like
suppose.
doing a hobby.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I suppose, but in big cities, this is becoming the norm in big cities and populations where people are moving across country for work in terms of relocating, in terms of finding their sort of feet. And you know yourself, to make a circle of friends if you're not from a designated area is a hard thing to come by these days, especially if you're gone past the college area. So this is in terms of concept. Might be a smart comedy. There's many people that have gone through these experiences where they have gone on blind dates and they have sort of maybe at the end of the day sort of said maybe in some real cases feared for their own safety.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that this movie touches on like a lot of universal themes, especially for women. Like we can relate to the idea of, sitting across from a guy and like, okay, is this just a bad date or is this like a real threat? And our movie sort of takes that concept and turns it up to an 11 in a very comedic way. But yeah, I think it's sort of like a PSA for, trusting your instincts and um, the little alarm bells that might go off to listen to them.
Yeah, and we all know about Lucy Hale's character, Ava. She's the one that's putting this all to the test. But tell us how Valerie fits into this sort of picture. Is she the one egging her on, dare I say, sort of pushing those buttons to make Ava go through with this, or is she one of the most ones that maybe has a bit of cautious judgment?
Okay, well, Valerie's definitely a character who pushes buttons. She's pretty intense. I would describe her as, let's see, if like an overprotective helicopter mom and a CIA operative and a true crime podcast obsessed person had a baby, and then that baby had two shots of espresso and never went to therapy, that would be Valerie. But she is a very overprotective force in Eva's life, and she doesn't want her, like, if she could bubble wrap her sister, she would prefer to do that. So she's really worried that her younger sister has gotten herself into a pickle with the fact that there's a serial killer on the loose and she's dating.
Okay. And in terms of Valerie, do we get to see a bit of her own life, a bit of her own marriage life, or is she always that sort of voice in the ear of Lucy more, or do we get to see her backstory a bit?
Definitely more advice in the ear of Lucy. A lot of Valerie's backstory is alluded to, but we just see the relationship between Lucy's character and my character.
Mm. And in terms of that sort of friendship circle, that wining and dining and restaurants that we see throughout the movie, very glam glam. Do I say were the meals sort of provided were they just as good as what you were tasting in terms of sampling? Because it looked like that you were having the four course meals and buffets supplied to you in terms of that.
I mean, no pun intended, but like props to the
Mm.
props department, right? They're great at creating these worlds that we step into that feel like real life. We were in some really cool pubs in British Columbia, which is actually where we shot the movie. The decor was really awesome. But a lot of those elements are just accentuated. And I wasn't actually eating fajitas, even though my character's so excited to be like a night out on the town and away from her three kids and husband. Yeah.
Yeah. And tell us, Brooke, how did this opportunity arrive on your doorstep? Was it through connections? Was it through a talent agent that sort of that profile script with a different coded name that we always hear about,
Yeah.
and backlines, and not knowing who's attached or what's attached until you get the all clear sign? Or was it a bit more sort of straightforward, or did it involve in-person sort of interviewing, which seems to be a thing of the Stone Age now. It's all virtual.
Yeah. Well, I this came through in a very straightforward way. It was an audition through my agent, and they sent me the script and the sides for the Valerie character, and it was a self-tape. So a friend of mine, who's also a comedic actress, and I we slapped it together and sent it off, and then I got a call back, and I got to read over Zoom like we're doing now, with the director and the casting director. And then things moved pretty quickly, and I was on a plane up to go shoot in Kelowna, British Columbia. So it was a pretty fast process, and yeah, it was fun, but very straightforward.
Yeah. And how would you, I spoke to many different actors over the past year or so. I've been asking this sort of concept. Obviously, it's different to generations. And how are you finding the whole technology era in terms of putting yourself out there in terms of movies, living and dying by what is in your background of your sitting room, basically, or what
Yeah.
sort of style of clothes, or who's giving you prompts? That or you can't really feel or engage the room. You can't really get a sense of what the director is saying. You can't get a sense of maybe who's sitting behind him making notes, or maybe whispering into an ear, or giving the thumbs up or thumbs down. It's very much the unknown concept, and some actors and actresses find that maybe a bit less stressful because they don't really have it's out of their hands, and they don't have the expectations that come with it. Others feel like they're very much in the dark, not knowing whether they did a good job or not. What's your sort of take on it?
Well, first of all, you did a really good job explaining and pointing out all of the yeah, all of the factors that go into this new way of garnering work with the technology involved now. I guess it's a mixed bag, really. I love the fact that I'm a new mom, so I have a 10-month-old. So in some ways, it makes it both easier and harder to be able to do this from home. In some ways, I have to say I have nostalgia for, being an actress here in Los Angeles and getting to drive onto these lots that have so much Hollywood history. Like you go through the gate, you park, you get to walk through these production houses and stages, and there's something that's really encouraging and hopeful about that. So that and exciting before you actually then go into an office and read for a show or a movie. So part of me sort of misses that excitement, that process. There's also then it means no traffic and no waiting for hours, in an audition line, all that stuff. Um, but I think I've gotten really good at the technology, and I've found an ease to how we just lay tapes down now in auditions. But I really do miss the in the room interactions, and I think even being able to prep for auditions in a different way where, sometimes on tape it feels like you can find it as you're taping, whereas when we would go in the room, like you have to be ready for anything. You have to be ready for any kind of reader or a redirect from the casting director. And I think it also involved a different level or way of prepping work. So it's a mixed bag. I can definitely see the positives to being able to travel and be anywhere versus in Los Angeles. There's a plus to that, but I do miss meeting people in the room.
And I suppose this movie, I suppose it has the explicit scenes, but it's more of a light rom-com in fairness. There's nothing over the zealous or over the top. It sort of adds to the humor. And I suppose as an actress, I know it was Lucy Hale that got to play those scenes. I imagine there's an awful lot of funny and hysterics, and obviously the chatter between the actress playing those sort of roles in terms of that. And was the chemistry and the camaraderie, was it all blasts on set, and was there a good sort of humor and banter in between takes in terms of what was being filmed?
Yeah, it really was a great fun set to be on. Our director, Laura Murphy, is so comfortable in the comedy space, and so she set the tone too of like try anything and go big, and like you couldn't do anything that was too big or wrong, you know? So we just tried everything, and I think it really shows up in the edit where they had so much to choose from. And there was a lot of cracking up between takes. There was a lot of resetting. And the first time I met Lucy, actually, before we started filming, we had to do a stunt rehearsal where my character jumps on her back. And Lucy's not a large person. She's very petite, and I'm petite as well, but I'm definitely larger than Lucy. And I was so afraid that during the stunt rehearsal I was going to break her, but she was so game for it, and it was very funny, and it was a really great bonding experience for us before we started to play sisters on screen.
Yeah, and there's an awful lot of femininity in the movement, but in terms of the masculinity, in terms of the male characters involved in this
Yeah.
project as well, obviously they have to show the different sides of their character. It's really what you call it on the spot in terms of acting. Uh, Adverb acting in terms of prompt you sort of stuff where they have to switch between guess roles. You're almost guessing with them. And but did you was there much interaction? Did the girls keep to themselves, and was your much of your scenes with that female entourage?
Yeah, well, most of my scenes were with Lucy, but there were certainly some group scenes together. And you know, we're in a green room, all hanging out together between takes while they're setting up lighting and setting up the shots. So we did have a chance to get to know each other and joke around, and that's always, you know, one of the best things about being on film sets is all the personalities and the fun banter, and even though it was often like